The troubles surrounding Yuki Tsunoda at Red Bull are far from over, even with the recent praise from Helmut Marko and Christian Horner regarding his performance. Despite the encouraging words, the Japanese driver found himself dead last in Barcelona's qualifying session based purely on pace. And now, serious questions are swirling around his future with the team, with his underwhelming form potentially costing Red Bull valuable points in the Constructors' Championship. So, who could realistically take the second seat alongside Max Verstappen? And more critically, is the move to Red Bull truly a promotion for young drivers coming through the ranks at Racing Bulls, or a career trap dressed in Red Bull overalls? Let's be blunt. Tsunoda's performance in Barcelona was worrying. P20, no traffic, no rain, just raw pace, or lack thereof. When your teammate is up there battling for pole while you're stuck in the basement, alarm bells start ringing. It only took 2 such disappointing weekends for drivers like Liam Lawson to re-emerge as legitimate contenders for the seat. And given the big shunt Yuki had back in Imola, some in the paddock feel he's being given more leniency than others might receive in his place. But that leniency may be wearing thin. According to Horner himself, Red Bull is puzzled. Yuki struggled all weekend. We added more downforce to try and help, but honestly, I'm not sure what else we can do to make him feel at ease in the car, he said. We'll need to dig deeper into it. Yuki, for his part, seemed baffled too. Post-qualifying, his radio messages revealed constant complaints about rear-end instability. He admitted, from FP1, there was something off, no grip at all. We tried various setup changes, but nothing really worked. The feeling just didn't improve. It's a brutal contrast when Verstappen is battling for front-row starts while you're stranded at the back of the grid. And that contrast makes conversations with Helmut Marko and Horner increasingly uncomfortable. This is not the driver they expected when they elevated him to the main team. To make matters worse, of the 10 points Tsunoda has scored so far in the 2025 season, 3 came during the first 2 rounds as a Racing Bulls driver, before his Red Bull promotion. What was supposed to be a step forward now looks suspiciously like a slide downward. And with rising stars like Arvid Lindblad making headlines in Formula 2, Tsunoda's window to prove himself is rapidly shrinking. If this Red Bull experiment fails, he could be out of F1 altogether. Reflecting on his weekend in Barcelona, Yuki sounded frustrated. I tried everything. The car just never gave me the feedback I needed. We pushed, we changed things, and it still felt disconnected. It's odd. Nothing really clicked. Given that he's now in his 5th season as a member of the Red Bull family, expectations were naturally higher. But time and patience, 2 luxuries in short supply at Milton Keynes, may be running out for Tsunoda. Ever since Pierre Gasly left the team, Yuki Tsunoda has managed to outperform drivers like Daniel Ricciardo and Nyck de Vries, and even matched up fairly well against Liam Lawson. But when the New Zealander was picked over him for the 2025 season, the message was clear. 2 back-to-back P20 qualifying finishes and a modest P8 in the sprint race were simply not good enough. The bar, it seems, was already set painfully low. So far, Yuki's stats sheet is far from spotless. His results, and frequent incidents, have cost Red Bull a hefty sum in repairs and perhaps a spot or 2 in the constructors' standings. If the Austrian outfit wants to remain a serious threat, they'll need a second driver who can consistently deliver, someone in the mold of proven talent. But let's be honest, the ideal candidate isn't coming. Carlos Sainz himself touched on this during recent comments. I spoke to Red Bull, but they weren't interested, he revealed. For various reasons, we couldn't come to an agreement. People who understand F1 probably know why Red Bull didn't want me. I don't hold it against them, it's just part of the business. So what does this tell us about Red Bull's decision-making? Above all, it suggests they still haven't cracked the code for that elusive second seat. The last time they had 2 competitive drivers pushing each other was back in 2018, before Ricciardo left. Since then, a revolving door: Gasly, Albon, Perez, Lawson, now Tsunoda. Ironically, Gasly and Albon have flourished in new environments. Perez is on his way out. And Lawson and Tsunoda remain stuck in Red Bull's pressure cooker, a system that's shown time and again to be hostile for anyone not named Verstappen. The expectations for Yuki remain sky-high, and no one is more aware of that than Tsunoda himself. Especially after the latest comments from team insiders suggesting that unless his performance improves, changes could be on the horizon. If Yuki wants to stay, he has to deliver, said one senior team member. Driving alongside Max is probably the toughest gig in F1. To be fair, Yuki has managed to score points fairly regularly, but that's not enough to cement his place. If he wants to be considered for next year, his form needs to improve significantly. When asked about this, the team spokesperson initially gave a vague response, but eventually expanded. Look, it's still early days for Yuki. He's reached Q3, he scored from the pit lane, we've seen encouraging moments. Sure, there have been some incidents too. But there's still time. The only thing we can do is offer him support and aim for a setup that inspires confidence. That's everything in these cars. Confidence. And once he has it, I believe he can piece everything together. He's got speed, he just needs to connect the dots. We're seeing glimpses of potential. Now he needs to show us the full picture. But the writing might already be on the wall. The logical next step for Red Bull? Promote Hadjar and the Racing Bulls program. That seems to be the succession plan already in motion. Is that the right call? Honestly, it's hard to say. The second Red Bull seat has felt cursed for years. Drivers promoted to it often end up taking a career hit instead of a step forward. Unfortunately for Tsunoda, this won't be a demotion like Gasly's or Lawson's. It'll likely be an exit. Red Bull is also looking ahead, and that future has a name, Arvid Lindblad. If the Tsunoda experiment doesn't yield results in 2025, it may mark the end of his time in Formula One. Now, I know what many of you are thinking. Is it really just Yuki's fault? Surely, he can't be so underwhelming that Red Bull has failed to find a solid partner for Max in over 7 years. Especially when many of the drivers who struggled in the Red Bull environment went on to thrive elsewhere. The problem, perhaps, isn't always the driver, but the system itself. In sharp contrast to Red Bull's internal messaging, 2016 World Champion Nico Rosberg gave his unfiltered opinion on the matter, and he wasn't buying the idea that the second Red Bull is just another car for any driver to handle. Rosberg flat-out stated, "There's no way you can convince me that the second Red Bull is easy to drive. Look at Max, he's fighting for pole, and Yuki Tsunoda is dead last. How does that make sense? Someone explain why nobody seems to get a handle on that second Red Bull." And Rosberg wasn't the only voice raising eyebrows. Sky Sports F1 commentator David Croft also weighed in, suggesting that Red Bull may have placed the wrong person in that all-important second seat. "Honestly," Croft said, "I think a different driver could get more out of the RB21. But let's be real, Red Bull's not going to sign Norris or Russell or anyone of that level. With all due respect to Yuki, and I know he's now the most experienced Japanese driver in F1 history, he's not Lando Norris. He's got talent, no doubt. But he's not a race winner yet. Hopefully one day he will be." Croft went on to add, expecting him to consistently finish 2 or 3 places behind Max isn't unfair. That's the benchmark for a top team. Red Bull fights for titles. It's not asking too much for their second driver to deliver solid results. This naturally brings up the question, would it even be wise for a young driver like Isack Hadjar to accept a potential offer from Red Bull should Helmut Marko or Christian Horner come calling? On paper, it might look like the chance of a lifetime, a golden ticket to the top tier of Formula One. But when you look at how other up-and-coming talents have struggled in that infamous second Red Bull cockpit, perhaps a little patience wouldn't hurt. Because let's face it, everything at Red Bull revolves around Max. Either he has a car that nobody else can fully unlock, or he's simply that far ahead of the curve. Whatever the case, It's hard to imagine anyone else consistently dragging the RB21 into the top 5 besides the Dutchman. So what's your take on the Yuki Tsunoda situation at Red Bull? And more intriguingly, do you think we could see a third driver cycling through the team before long? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. And while you're at it, don't miss the next video popping up on your screen right now.